One of my favorite mentors, and again, was not a man that I knew extremely well personally. I did get to spend quite a bit of time with him in small settings, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes me and a couple of other ministers, but he had a huge impact on me. And that would be the great missionary evangelist T.L. Osborne. A lot of Americans today a lot of believers today, totally unfamiliar with what he did. In the 20th century, there was perhaps no man on earth who preached the gospel to more people than he did, and face to face. You might argue that Billy Graham may have had wider exposure, but certainly not face-to-face meetings. Billy Graham did all of his big meetings in stadiums. Brother Osborne once told in our church he didn't use stadiums when he went into the third world. He said they're too small. He said we built huge platforms, we had huge sound systems, and we did this in open fields, and he said we had amazingly large crowds, hundreds of thousands of people. He said a soccer stadium was way too small. So he said this is what we chose to do. And in one campaign that he did in East Africa, Kenya, I believe it was, back in the 60s, 70s, there were over 600 churches started out of that meeting. And he had just an amazing amount of influence. He had so many conversions in India that the Indian government put him on a restricted list and would not allow him back in their country because they feared the effect he would have on their population. Not that it was destructive, they just didn't want people converting to Christianity. And so the point that I want to make is this man had an amazing overseas ministry, and he stayed overseas. In other words, he rarely came back to the United States. He made the mission field his field. He went overseas constantly. He used to have a museum here in Tulsa. I went to it when it was still standing. And what I was impressed by is all the gifts that had been given to him by kings, by presidents, expensive cars, all kinds of artwork, things that were given to him out of gratitude for what happened when he came into their nations and literally changed the nations with the gospel of Christ. And so this man was a legend, and he was so mysterious because we never saw him. He didn't travel in the American churches. He didn't have a great partner base with the American churches. He might have had that from the 1950s, but by the time you got into the 70s, a lot of his partners had passed on and gone home to be with the Lord. And so he started speaking again in churches in America in the early 80s, and the American church was totally unfamiliar with him. And this is what he said. He said, America forgot us. He said, Daisy and I went to the world, and we spent most of our time outside the country. And what we didn't realize is the Americans forgot us. And even though we were doing great things, they didn't know about it. We tried to tell them, but he said, we have to build a better relationship with our partners here in America. Now, how did he affect me? Well, you're going to think that this is kind of reversed, and it may even appear that I'm bragging, but I'm not. But I was sitting on a plane, and we were flying. It's a Delta flight, I think, because we were on the way to Salt Lake City. And so I was in the front part of the plane. He was in the back, and he went by us on his way to the back. The plane was not full. And so I started to speak, and I thought, no, I'll respect his privacy. I let him go by. But I had met him 3-4 times in, again, those green rooms where I would preach to the kids and at night go in and have fellowship with the pastor and the other guest speakers. And he would be there, and what a treat it was just to sit and to listen to all of his stories. So he and his wife were sitting back on, I would say, about row 17, 18, something like that. And the row in front of them was completely empty. So I went back and looked over the seat, stuck out my hand and said, Brother Osborne, my name is Willie George. I met you before, and I just wanted to say I sure appreciate what you do. And he said, I know who you are. He said, where are you going? And I told him, I said, we're going to Washington State. What are you going to do when you get there? I said, well, I'm going to do 3 things. I'm going to preach for the pastor on a Sunday morning. All day Saturday, I'm going to do a children's ministry conference. And on Friday night, I'm going to do a big rally for families called the Gospel Bill Show. And so I'm doing really 3 different things. And he said, are you doing this in one church? I said, I am doing it in one church, but I'm expecting 25 or 30 churches in the area, in the region, to send their children's workers. And we'll have a lot of other people come in on that Friday night rally besides, because they watch the Gospel Bill Show on their TV stations. He said, how do you pay for this? I said, well, I charge a fee to the children's workers. I think it's $25 a person is what we charge for an all-day Saturday conference, but that's how we pay for it. He said, so how do you pay for all this stuff? And he wanted to know what our financial structure was. And I could tell that he was having to completely reinvent himself because he had been out of the country. Now listen to this. This is important. We have these ideas, as long as we stay spiritual, we don't have to pay attention to business. That's baloney. Because I've been around a lot of amazing ministers who had put spiritual things first, but they did have to pay attention to business. And when they didn't, it bit them and bit them hard. And so I had to learn. I had no choice. I had to get partners. I had to sell products. I had to get out and go to churches. I had to do meetings. It was not really something I wanted to do. I had to do it. I was pushed into doing it by circumstances, but it wound up being a wonderful thing. And I took control of it instead of it controlling me, and I regulated my schedule, and I made a deal with the Lord. I said, I will not lose my family, and I will do this in such a way that it doesn't keep me from my kids and my wife. I am going to do this the right way. And God bless me in the doing of that. I spent an hour and a half kneeling in that seat in front of T.L. and Daisy Osborne, answering their questions. I was wanting to ask them questions. I wanted answers from them. They wouldn't give them to me. Every time I started to ask a question, they came back with another one. And they pulled out of me every bit of practical information that I had. They wanted to know how we advertised, how we staffed our ministry, what kind of building did we have, or where did we get our TV gear. I mean, it was one thing after another. How do you build these relationships with pastors? What did you do? I mean, it was remarkable. And I thought, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I've read this man's books. I've seen pictures of 1 million people in meetings that he did. And I'm a little kids ministry guy. And here is this man who is picking my brain, wanting to know what I do. And I thought, what humility. And that is what I would say is one of the greatest lessons that I ever learned. Here was a man who was approaching 70 years of age, and he was so humble that he was willing to ask counsel from a 30-year-old. And he was willing to pick my brain. And I thought, I want to learn from this. I'm never going to stop learning. When I go to another pastor's church, if he's 25, 30 years younger than me, I am not going to assume that I know more than what he knows. He knows things that I don't yet know. And I've learned over the years to be humble and to ask other men, what's going on? How do you do this? Tell me what's made your church go. Tell me how you staff. Tell me how you reach your community. And you know what's amazing to me? There is no one strategy. I see several different strategies at work. What John Huseman does in Salina, Kansas is absolutely remarkable, amazingly remarkable. And he has built up a church of more than 3,000 people, 3,500 people. This guy is killing it in Salina, Kansas. And when I went to him the first time, probably 7, 8 years ago, he might have had 200 people at the most. I'm telling you what, this guy has a strategy for reaching his city. And so you need to make yourself available to these people. Pick their brains. Watch what they do. It's not just the big dogs that you want to listen to. You ought to listen to people who are in the same station of life that you are. And that's what I learned from T.L. Osborne. And I do think it helped me because it kept me from allowing myself to be full of myself. And I always realize there's always something more I can learn. Now listen to what Jesus said about this. This is Luke's Gospel, chapter 22. There was also a strife among them, verse 24 says, which of them should be accounted the greatest? And he said to them, the kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and they that exercise authority upon them are called benefactors. But you shall not be so. But he that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger, and he that is chief as he that does serve. For who is greater, he that sets at meat, or he that serves? Is it not he that sets at meat? But I, Jesus said, am among you as one who serves. Don't ever lose the serving component in your ministry. This is the thing that will take you to the top. I want to thank you for watching our podcast today. And if you really liked it, would you please give us a little thumbs up by clicking on that sign down below? And then I would encourage you to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our future podcasts, because they're all going to be good. And if you would like to support us financially, either with a one-time gift or recurring gift, you can do that by clicking on the link below or going to myfaithroots.com. Thank you so much for watching this program.